first up is roll call. Charlie.
Present.
Linda.
Present.
Jenny.
Present.
Dan Cobb, I am here, and David is excused this evening, so we'll go with the four of us. First up is minutes approval. Did anyone have any comments or adjustments to the February 12th minutes?
Nope.
Nope.
Is there a motion to approve as submitted?
Move to approve minutes as submitted.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
All in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, we'll do the minutes. All right, information exchange. I see Kristen's got a couple things in the memo.
Sure, just updating everyone on the Village Transformation Project. The DOT came down and had an open house with the town on March 4. It was very well attended. They had the plans up for what they're looking to do with the intersection work and road improvements. So that they got some pretty good feedback, I think, to bring back to the table. It's a long process. I think we're looking like 2035 or something, I think, and Councilor Pledge can speak to that more, but it was a good, well-attended event to get people aware of what might be happening on that. And if you're interested in it, that the Village Transformation Project is for the public too, is posted on the town website. There's a whole section about that effort. And tonight we have public hearings on 3 different ordinances, amendments to zoning and subdivision, and a new proposed growth ordinance. And we did have the first public hearing on those on March 3 at Town Council. The only input I received at that time on these was, on the 2 that I'm handling, was to change a shall to a may, so very, very minor change. And I think Tammy got some input on growth as well, which she'll share with you tonight. And then we're looking to get some more feedback this evening to bring it back to council, potentially with amendments on April 7, all 3 of those, except for subdivision. Subdivision has been tabled, so we have some time to work on that. That one's a little more complicated, but council did table that one, so we'll be bringing that back through, starting over the process.
Okay. Anyone from the board have any information?
Ooh.
None here either. Anything?
I think Tammy's going to speak to us tonight with regards to some work the Ordinance Advisory Committee's been doing on a growth ordinance with LD 1829 coming into place. If we don't have something in place, we're concerned that when that does go in place, they will say, if you don't have something in place, you can't do anything. Mm-hmm. So by putting something in place, it's hopefully going to protect us as we kind of wade through the waters on that. As Kristen said, we had the Village Transformation Project with the DOT come down, and very preliminary. I don't think people realize how long the process is. In fact, I think the final bids and the final analysis isn't till like 2031. So it's a very long project, and then once it starts, it's probably a couple years in the making. So if everything goes according to plan, it's still probably 2033, 2034 till it's done. So we still have more time to come back to look at things, to make changes, to make adjustments, and to do some planning accordingly, because the reality is by the time that comes out, the estimations are giving us for a cost, could be considerably more, and we just need to make sure that we have that money set aside. We're on the hook regardless for 10% of it. So if it's over by 20 million, it's another 2 million. Obviously we had our budget meeting last week, our first budget meetings, and we are much tighter on finances than we thought, so we've got a lot to go through, but we'll get through it.
Cool, thanks. All right, we'll keep moving on then. So next up is continued business, and we have one item, which is the GNG High School, Middle School, and Route 26 Safety Improvement Site Plan Amendment. This is a request by the Town of Gray and MSAD 15, represented by Sebago Technics Engineering, for Planning Board Major Site Plan Amendment Review of a proposal to improve pedestrian accessways along Libby Hill Road and the school campus area of Route 26, and add an emergency accessway to the Gray New Gloucester High School parcel map 027-15-009, located in the rural, residential, and agricultural zoning district. This proposal is subject to major site plan review. Welcome back. So you were here last month and there's been a few adjustments. We
Sure.
look forward to hearing that and keeping things moving along.
Thank you. Nikki Conant with Sebago Technics, representing the town on behalf of the sidewalk and access projects on Libby Hill and Route 26. Hopefully, let's see if my screen share, there we go. So I've brought forward this evening primarily just some updated plans related to the emergency access, hearing the comments last meeting surrounding specifically access from the school side into the emergency access. We met as a collective group. The town, Public Works had input as well as the school and fire staff to talk about solution generation around this. Ultimately, where we landed was implementing a secondary gate from the parking lot side as well as providing some striping on the parking lot side for fire lane access, just to encourage that if there are overflow events, no one is parked blocking that area. And we've also provided some additional signage, both for referencing authorized vehicles only and also to discourage pedestrians from using the pathway. Hopefully you can see on that PDF some examples of those signs that we are proposing.
All right. Any questions from the board? I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Anything to add, Kristen?
No, I think we had a really good conversation
Yep.
with the facilities folks at the high school, the fire chief, and Public Works, and Nikki and her team. And I think they all agreed that you had a good point about blocking access from the other end as well. And this is probably the most appropriate approach that we're hoping would work for you.
Okay. I only have one minor question, but I'm just curious about that last parking space and the striped area. Like, does that space go away? It doesn't look like someone could actually park there. Or are they going to be expected to park in front of it?
Yeah, so it's
Seems like it infringes into that space, like.
the aerial is a little on the older side. I
Oh,
don't
gotcha.
know.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think the striping extends out into an area that's not necessarily a designated space that abuts the grassed area. But we could certainly shorten that back a little bit. Really, just having the striping there in general so that someone doesn't park right in front of it was the intent.
Yep, that's fine. I guess my only comment would be I wouldn't have a hashed out fire access only that projected partway into a parking space. But
Absolutely.
it's just a minor thing.
Sure.
Anybody have anything, or? We
Okay,
can
address
have a
the
motion to
problem.
approve then?
I do. Move to approve the application by the Town of Gray and School Administrative District 15, represented by Sebago Technics Engineering, for major site plan amendment review of a proposal to improve pedestrian access ways along Libby Hill Road and the school campus area of Route 26, and add an emergency access way to the Gray New Gloucester High School parcel map 027, lot 015-009, located in the rural residential and agricultural zoning district with portions in Business Transitional 1 and Wellhead 2 zoning districts. This proposal is subject to major site plan review and to the following conditions listed 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the board memo.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, that's 4-0.
Thank you. I appreciate
All right,
it.
thanks. So next up, we have we have public hearings, and these are changes to amendments to subdivision, zoning ordinance, and proposed growth ordinance. And if the board is amenable to switching the order, if we could take the growth ordinance first, it would allow us to tie up only one of our town staff instead of two tonight for the remainder of the meeting. So I think she would much appreciate it if we could do that.
Totally game.
I do. Tammy Munson, the Director of Code Enforcement and Planning. I appreciate that very much, planning board members. And thank you, Kristen, for letting me go first. So just to give you a little bit of background, basically there's, as we all know, there's been extensive, rapidly changing amendments to many of our state laws around density requirements. The first was LD 2003, which was the ADU amendment. And then we ended up with LD 1829, which is what Kristen is wrapping into a lot of her stuff tonight, and established the 5,000 square foot lot, established, pretty much said there's no more single family zoning anymore allowed anywhere in the state, and made some pretty extensive changes. Well, one of the things that we learned from that is that it also establishes an allowable, that you're allowed to have a 5,000 square foot lot size if you have public water in a comparable sewer system. So comparable sewer system is defined in another land use law in the state as basically an engineered septic system. A comparable sewer system is what this building has, which is a system that serves 2,000 GPD or more per day. So essentially, somebody could come in for a subdivision, clustered, or however you want it, whatever the proper name is up here, with a 5,000 minimum square foot lot size for, say, 15 houses and do one septic system, and they would be able to put this in gray if it's served by public water, which is a lot more areas than we initially thought. There was a proposed development recently of that came in front of council that they were looking for a contract zone at the time for something like 600 houses in a very congested area. That would qualify to do this. Luckily, the law did not establish you having to change your setbacks, so the likelihood of you being able to get 5,000 square foot lots would be unlikely. But there is a number out there that's under 20,000 that you could probably meet everything. The only way that we have to protect the town from somebody sliding in and being able to do one of these developments is to put a growth ordinance into place. That is how this all came about. There wasn't a big push behind anything. The OAC wasn't pro-growth ordinance. If anything, it was kind of not really in favor of it and just allow development to happen as it does. But with these density requirements being pushed onto us, we figure it's better to get something in place on the books to protect ourselves until we see what's coming. So basically what this does is it requires individuals, if you want to build a single-family home within the town of Gray, to have to apply for a growth permit. It limits the number of growth permits that the town can issue per year. It does exclude things like accessory dwelling units do not count. Affordable housing units do not count. A dwelling unit that is on a gifted family lot does not count. And it does limit the number of growth permits that a developer can get. So if you did have somebody come in that wanted to grab all 70 of them the first of the year to build their subdivision, they're not going to be able to do it just because they're first in line with 70 applications. I don't know if you had a chance to read this or not, but I'm certainly willing to go through it. Basically, it's a pretty standard ordinance. I've done these in other communities, and it pretty much mirrors what they've had in place before. Basically, it's more work for us. You do have to do the growth permit application. You are, and then basically you have 6 months to apply and secure your building permit. It does establish a limit in the different districts, which the OAC, this is based on recommendations from the Ordinance Advisory Committee. And it limits the number as far as like a developer or single person can get. And I'm happy to go through any more of this if you'd like. Basically, the number was established under the old growth law, which is a state law. There's a law that mandates how you write growth ordinances. It's currently, it's 105% of the past 10 years of your average. The new bill that's coming out, which is LD 2173, is going to establish 130% of the past 5 years. These numbers reflect that. That's why there's already a red line strike through this.
Okay.
And the council did want to limit the number specifically in wellhead 1 and 2. So I think that's pretty much my state LD growth ordinance update. I hope I haven't overwhelmed you with too many
No, that's
moving parts.
helpful.
Yeah, I think that's good for now, and maybe I'll ask, so far this has been through town staff and once at town council, right? So,
Yes.
Yeah, we wanted to send it back to you. You know, one of the things we did is, if you looked at most of the housing developments that came through here, they seemed like they were under, like 10-ish around there. So that's why we figured you could build half your, if you start at the beginning of the year, you could build half your houses one year and half the next year, and that's kind of how we came out to 5, to make sure, like she said, nobody would kind of hoard everything.
Yeah, and just to give you a little bit of background, I mean, there was the Ordinance Advisory Committee, there was an extensive discussion around this ordinance and establishing the numbers, and there was a lot of thoughtfulness that went into what we were recommending in each district, as far as knowing how long does it take you to complete the infrastructure and roads and et cetera on an approved subdivision, and realistically, how many houses can one developer do within a certain time frame? Because we certainly don't want to hinder our local people from doing their development. And this isn't intended to do that. This is really intended to prevent, at least to put a hold on that big developer coming in, sliding in under this law, which probably is going to change back at some point, to be able to do like that 600 unit established 5,000, 10,000 square foot lot development and get in the window that it's allowed. And that's really, at this point, what we're trying to do. And then moving forward, we can amend it and adjust it as we see fit.
all right, thanks. Any questions from the board?
I don't know if this is the right time. We're going to open a public hearing.
It is a public hearing, so.
Okay. I
but
do.
we can do board
Okay.
feedback first, and
Okay.
then I'll do a public hearing after. That's fine.
So I have a question. So it sounds like in terms of the numbers, what was attempted to be done is just reflect the scope of development and size of development that we've seen sort of in the recent past. So we're not trying to chop it down. We're just trying to sort of like keep it about the same as we've seen recently. Is that fair
Correct.
to say?
Correct. What we're trying to do is we're trying to accommodate what typically happens in each district. That's why, if you see the majority of houses are built in RRA, which is the highest number,
Yeah.
then it does go down in Lake District because that was the second one. But that's also a little more, that gets into the little more sensitive area as far as, with it's lake for a reason because it's near water, it's near shoreland, most of them aren't in that, but,
Yeah.
it gets a little more critical. The smaller than these numbers, the more critical kind of areas they jump into.
Right.
And then the rest of them are in your business, your commercial and all of that. And then they did want,
Sorry about that.
they did want the wellhead specifically limited to 1 each, which I think is appropriate. I don't think I've ever issued a permit for a new single-family home in a wellhead since I've been here.
Yeah.
And I know one of them, somebody that is from here and knows this area very, very well, pretty much says that doesn't even think you could find one to be able to put one there. So,
And then I just have
Sure,
one,
yeah,
one
go
other
for it.
thing to say. So I was a landowner in a community that had something a little bit like this. I had a place on Fry Island, and they had everyone referred to it as sort of like a moratorium, but it was this. There was a certain number of permits that would be issued each year, and once those were issued, there were no more. And it had not long after we moved there, we bought something that existed. It had a bit of a surprising effect that I don't think anyone there realized, and I understand the reason for us doing it now, and it makes a lot of sense so that we're not surprised by the impacts of this ordinance that the state has passed. But what happened was if there were building permits to be had, even if there was not otherwise a desire to, people used them, even if they weren't ready. So they would sort of like, people would end up building, because there was this many permits, like it's scarcity, right? They're like, oh, there's only one left. We want to use it now. And it was a completely different situation. Fry Island's obviously a unique place. And I think that they may have tied the permits, like they cycled through, like, okay, now your lot is up. So it was different, but it had a surprising effect that I don't think anyone expected, that they ended up building more than would have just happened naturally. And so I just want to toss out there my personal experience with it. And that's one of the reasons that the town ended up taking it away. And after they took it away, the number of house lots that got permitted was less than when they had a cap. So, sort of not what you would expect, but it sounds like there's a lot of other reasons to do this, and that might not apply, but I just wanted to toss it out
No, that's
there.
the more info we get, the better, obviously, number one. I think the big thing is this prevents, first of all, if there's nothing in place, the state can say, if you don't have anything in place, you can't put anything. So we literally could change this in September, and if we got feedback from you folks or people are coming in, we can actually go as part of the, we can change it whenever. But now we can, so it's not, it's kind of to protect us. So if you came to us and said, hey, Vinny, we're seeing this, can we, to your point, we would say, all right, let's adjust it, and we'd work with you. Because what we're worried about is the big units where they come in, like she said, it's 600 units.
Yeah.
They could come in, and once they do that, we're in trouble.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's,
Yeah,
that's good to know. I
you
just
know,
wanted
We can
to.
change it immediately, yes.
Right, in the background to that, in the LD 1829, is that when it started out, it says the 5,000 square foot lot, and it says public water, and then it lists things like public sewer, quasi-utility sewer, comparable sewer system, special sewer district. The intention was for it to be a PUC, or semi-quasi, local municipal. But that's not what it says. So right now, the law as legally defined, and that would be one in court, that definition allows for an engineered septic system. I do anticipate that will be changed in the future, but right now, there will be a window where this will be allowed. So this is really only to just get something on, and everything's changing so fast that, as Vince said, I think someday they're going to say, you're not allowed to do a growth cap anymore.
Yeah.
Because the need for housing is so high here.
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else?
Well, I saw
That was
a
a
lot.
no, now it's a
I
yes.
saw a lot of engineered system, and I think that's very good solution in general.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any additional comments. So it is a public hearing, so I am going to open it up to the public. We have a member of the public approaching the podium. Welcome.
I guess I can be considered part of the public, yeah. Wayne Wood,
Been a
resident of
long
the
time.
town.
Welcome back.
I try and avoid planning boards at all costs, but here I am, yes. I would echo what Tammy has said. I am, like several of your members are, very unfavorable to growth ordinances because they don't do what they're supposed to accomplish in most towns. However, sitting and listening to not just what she's saying about these two LDs that have come out of the state in the last 2 years. I sit on the board of the executive board of the Maine Society of Land Surveyors, and we have been thrashing this stuff around for as many years as they've been doing it. And it's not a pretty picture what's coming out of Augusta these days. So I would support a growth ordinance for the purposes of doing what she's echoed, and that is to protect us in the short term. I would envision that this is going to go away as soon as they work the kinks out of these laws in Augusta. Having said that, I don't have a lot of faith in them doing that because they aren't listening to too many local people before they write these laws into place. So I would support this type of a thing right now.
Thank you. Anybody else? All good. Okay. We'll close the public hearing then. I think we're good. On to the next step. It sounds like we're doing a good thing. We're looking out for ourselves. Sometimes you need to do that when the state's not going to look out for us, so.
And again, I want to emphasize that as we're here, if people come up and there's any kind of conflict or you see something, you know, one of us will always be here, whether it's myself
Yeah.
or somebody else, we can go ahead and change it. So it's not like this is in place for 3 years. We're going to do what's best based on all of us together.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks for your time.
You know,
Okay.
Tammy?
All right. Now we'll go back to our regularly scheduled programming,
Yes.
which is item 6A. 6A. So these are proposed amendments to subdivision and zoning ordinances, and Kristen is going to present those to us.
So, Kristen Muzinski, planner. I think it would make sense to start with the zoning, because it's a little bit simpler. If you want to start off with that one.
Sure.
So there's a cover sheet, and then it's all labeled to correspond with the cover sheet. So it should be hopefully easy to follow along. I'm just kind of going to run through these changes, and obviously if there are any you want to touch on further, we could probably do that from there. So these are section number 1 of these changes are required per the new state law, the LD 1829 that Tammy was referencing, the housing density law. So 1A is updating definitions to reflect those legal changes. 1B is reflecting the density standard changes. 1C is the updates to the accessory dwelling units. 1D is calling out what our existing growth overlay district is. So that'll match the language of the new law. To point out that one, what we're reviewing as being the growth overlay district at this time as defined in these amendments is the village center and village center proper, because those are what are defined in our current zoning ordinances being for growth, and also in the comprehensive plan. When you look at where the town was looking to direct growth, it was those areas that may potentially be amended during the rezoning process, which is a separate piece of actually rezoning the town, creating new zoning districts and so on. That can be revisited. Does the town want to retain only what is currently defined as VC and VCP as the growth? But for now, this will define it and make it very clear for people coming who are looking to have those growth elements apply to their property. 1E is the ZBA and Planning Board duties and authority. Those are changes in the law that we needed to implement. One of them, just as an FYI, relates to training for both of those boards. So if you haven't done one of the, not mandated, but one of the trainings that's offered typically by Maine Municipal, or one of those official entities, GPCOG, that is something that you are supposed to do within 180 days. So I will keep our new members posted. I haven't seen one coming up anytime soon, but we'll let you know. 1F is site plan review applicability. Again, a legally required change. 1G, the minimum parking standards are updated in the new state law. No requirement for a parking space for an ADU. We added, to the extent that we could under the new law, greater requirement for senior housing based on the feedback from the Avesta Meadowview project, because our current ordinance was quite low, and we've been hearing a lot of complaints from that development that it's not enough parking. So we are seeking to address that within this change. So you'll see that reflected in 1G. 1H is the multifamily development standards, and probably the biggest piece here is the elimination of a perimeter buffer strip for a multifamily development, because the new state law does not allow you to apply requirements to multifamily that you would not apply to single family. So that's probably the biggest change there. Units per building and separation restrictions. So again, we can get into any detail on any of those that you would like to. I'll just run through section 2. Those are housekeeping updates. Many of these are per advice from our town attorneys over the past few years, actually, that we were not able to bring forward to clarify and get updated. So clarifying conflict with other ordinances and how those are handled. 2B actually came about from Melinda's comments about majority planning board. The language from the training didn't quite match up with our ordinance, so that we're fixing that to make that clear. 2C is related to mobile homes. There was some restrictive language you're not allowed to keep anymore. 2D, matching up national fire protection standards with the zoning ordinance, so they're not in conflict anymore. I believe some of that was, yeah, there's some in subdivision as well. 2E, legal notice for site plan extension not being required. That was a legal requirement. ZBA right of appeal language clarification. And 2F, that's not substantive. It's just trying to clarify the language that exists there, so it's easier to understand. 2G, backlot access easements clarification. That's been a standing policy that, oh no, I'm sorry, the 2G is related to the backlot. Just clarifying the language. We had some questions from a developer was trying to parse this and was like, what does this mean? And we're like, oh, it is pretty unclear. So trying to clarify that. Again, not necessarily substantive. And 2H is adding a definition for senior living, because that was listed in the parking standards, but was not actually defined. Like, what is senior living? So those are the zoning ordinance updates. I don't know if there are any that you want to discuss in more detail. They're all outlined here before we go into public hearing, or how you want to handle that.
So just before there's any questions or asks for discussion, just to clarify how much of this, if any, do we have any influence over? Just for context.
Right, these are put down on us. The zoning ones are pretty clear. If you didn't want to expand the parking for senior housing, that would be something that's a little bit discretionary, but that has been kind of recommended, I think, per our experience with that project.
Trust me, that's one that we're not going to. Yeah. I've seen every one of the emails.
Yep. I think these are all pretty straightforward.
My point was, I didn't want folks to ask a lot of questions, because,
There's
not that I don't want you to ask a lot of questions, but I didn't want questions about stuff that we can't do anything about, because that's what most of this is.
Right,
It's
yeah,
pretty much set in
content-wise,
stone.
I don't think we have a lot of leeway on these. If
Yeah.
you had questions for the ones that were like clarifying, particularly under number 2, if there is anything I can explain there, those are for
I think
clarity.
I only had one question. It was the buffer strip one.
Yes.
So does that mean that if we had the same requirement for single family, then you could require it?
I believe so. It has to be
Right now,
equal.
we don't have that requirement for single family. It was a requirement, or is until this changes, for multifamily.
Right,
And that's going away because it's only multifamily.
right.
So, or it could stay if the same requirement were there for single family. Is that accurate?
I believe so,
Okay.
legally, yes.
And why did we choose to make it go away instead of have it in both places?
This is a 50-foot wide perimeter buffer. So that would be a significant increase in the setbacks around your home, especially depending on which zoning district the parcel is located in.
Yeah, yeah.
There would be a lot of houses that would.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
Not me.
All right. Thank you, Kristen. So this is also a public hearing, so we'll open this one up to the public. Please step back and sign in again.
don't have to sign it again, I'm the same person. A lot of effort's gone into this, I can tell. Unfortunately, the first I knew of the extent of some of this was when it came up to the council for a first reading. So I did not have the liberty to offer a lot of input to anything. In the interim, it was not brought to ordinance review, us at OAC for any consult on it either. So I'm not sure, there's no point, I don't think, in me standing here and going through and with you folks and picking out every little thing that I think might have issues. I'll put it that way. I think I'm better to sit down with Kristen as I've done my research and gone through this for several of the things. And I'll be honest with you, this zoning stuff, she's pretty clear that most of it is as mandated by the state coming down through for some of the language changes. There are a few things I picked up that I'm not sure why they're the way they are, because they aren't part of that. They would be in that second section of things that are housekeeping type stuff. So I don't think it would behoove your time or mine to sit here and put it out in the public hearing, so to speak, just for the sake of putting it out in the public hearing. I think I'm better off to do that with her and see what we can come up with on that front. If that's, I just want to let you know that there are some stuff that I've looked at that I think needs to be looked at. And since you reminded me, I'll sign you.
No, that's great. I'm sure we all appreciate the input, and we think you're better off working directly with Kristen too. I know you're an expert in this stuff, so appreciate your comments.
I've had plenty of experience, yes.
You have.
I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
And that's where we ran into a lot of comments with the engineered septic systems and that stuff coming out of a seminar I went to, and the lawyers hadn't even thought about it that way yet. But the minute you brought that up to them, they're going, I'd take that chance.
Right.
That's why you've seen what we've done with the growth ordinance, because of those comments.
Yep. Thank you. Anybody else? All good? Okay. Close this public hearing then. All right. Yep. One more public hearing, and this one is on subdivision ordinance amendments.
So this one, Mr. Chair, I think we could maybe get input kind of as the ones come up that need input, and kind of just update you on the others
Yeah,
as we go
sure.
through,
Yeah.
if that works.
Yep. Works great.
Starting with the housekeeping updates, this is the one that brings the cistern and hydrant language into NFPA compliance. This is all input from the fire chief on updating that language and fixing that discrepancy of the 500 versus 600 feet. I know we've had to do waivers on before because ordinance didn't meet NFPA. It fixes that, brings those into compliance. B, which is amendment number 3, is clarifying the planning board submittals. Right now, there's a lot of language that references giving me 14 copies every time you bring an application in, which most of the changes here are getting rid of that language to say, please consult a planner to see how many copies we need. Because the planning board has been as little as 3 people. We certainly don't need 14. So just clarifying those standards and changing some language like consulting engineer because we don't have a town engineer, little stuff like that. C, and amendment number 4, is clarifying the monumentation standards. And we did have some initial feedback from the board. I know there was some input on wanting to, I think, retain the ability to waive and to review those and to keep some solid monumentation in there. So there's a minor change reflected here, but not as drastic, I think, as we had initially potentially contemplated, because I didn't get that level of feedback from the board. that you wanted to go with just pins or anything like that. D, Amendment 5, this is all non-substantive typos, clarification references. And then it gets into simplifying some of the open space requirements. And there is one piece in this that is open to update that we do need feedback on. The in lieu of open space payment process. We dealt with that recently with a couple of applications. And the process in the current ordinance is that if you don't want to set aside open space in your subdivision, you have to go to the town council and negotiate that fee. What we are proposing here with input from the town attorney is to instead add it to our fee schedule. So it's very black and white. If you don't want to do open space, here's what you're going to pay. And there's no negotiation, there's no confusion, there's no time delay either with having to get it on a council agenda. So it clarifies that process. And that is the very last page of that memo packet that shows the update to that open space payment process. So I don't know if you want to pause there and provide input on that, if there's support for that or comment on that.
Yeah, on the negotiation thing, I am definitely not interested in negotiating as a board with an
Right.
applicant. Like, that would just be a very
Hard pass.
painful experience. Like, how do you even do it with a board? And you end up having to go into like sessions, like, yeah, so that's fine. I'm perfectly good with that. I don't have anything that comes to mind yet. Anybody have anything?
Nope.
Good with that? Okay. We'll keep moving then.
What page are you on now? Because I was just like, I lost.
Amendment number 6, which is E. I believe it's page 10. This one's in.
I had one thing it slowed me down because it caught my attention, and it just, it's on page 7.
Okay.
And it references shall include the state of Maine professional certification seal for the licensed land surveyor, and they're licensed, not certified. So you just might want to get that, right?
Okay. So you don't think that's the right
Did I steal your
term?
thunder? Were you going to come up and say that?
Professional licensing seal? Is
But,
that-
I mean, it's just, it's not a certification, it's a license, so however you want to
Oh,
do it,
license,
it's fine.
interesting. Okay, got it.
Yeah, sorry. And so where are you now?
So on page 10, amendment number 6.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll keep moving. This is allowing the planning board authority to require shared driveways in more situations. Right now, it's limited to certain types of roads and would give you the authority to require them elsewhere. F on page 11, amendment number 7, is removing the requirement for streetlights at dead ends. That has been consistently waived by this board, and I don't think there's support to keep it, so that's where that came from. G, amendment number 8, allowing the planning board more authority to review odd-shaped lots. This came up in one of the other recent subdivisions, the one off of Jenny Drive, I believe, where some of the language got a little tight. So this would give a little bit more leeway for the board. And again, stop me at any point if there are any of these you want to chime in on. H, amendment number 9 on page 12. This is formalizing the requirement for a pre-construction meeting and updated reference regarding default on completing improvements. This is something that we added a few years ago to do the pre-construction meeting to make sure everyone's on the same page and understands what the expectations will be with relation to inspections and things like that. It's been really beneficial in improving communication between town staff and the developer and the consulting engineer. So this just codifies it effectively. Amendment number 10 on page 14. This is simplifying some of the subdivision driveway standards and referencing the street ordinance standards instead. So right now, the driveways are subject to the standards in the street ordinance, but there's also language in subdivision, and this is just an attempt to try to clarify and consolidate that language. The substantive change here is formalizing the longstanding public works policy on not allowing a driveway off of a hammerhead, which we've dealt with a lot with planning board, and this would put it into the actual ordinance. Right now, it's up to discretion of the public works director, but for the past several decades, it's my understanding, they have not allowed one off a hammerhead. So this puts that in the language. Page 16, amendment number 11. This is an update to a 50-year storm standard instead of 25. This was per Zenya's input regarding the heavier storms that we've had. So that was per that advice. Amendment number 12 on page 16. This is formalizing the disallowance of backlots in a traditional subdivision, not an open space cluster one, but a traditional subdivision, which has also been a longstanding policy but was not on the books to point to clarify. Amendment number 13 on page 17. This one is formalizing open space committee input to you as a planning board during sketch plan review. We've been doing that process of having them take a look at where they think open space should be and giving you their opinion. Councilor Gass did have a minor amendment to this to say that they may instead of shall, to change that language to make sure that that remains advisory to you and it's not a requirement. So like if they didn't do it, you couldn't move forward. So I have that amendment. That's the only amendment I have on the books so far other than from tonight. Are there any, you want to stop for comments before we get into the next section, or we're good to keep rolling?
Everybody good?
My only comment is thank you. You're making good changes here.
Yeah.
Most of them are yours, so. It's the sports.
All bringing back memories of past projects.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, it's trying to get some cleanup done so things are easier going forward. So the LD 1829 and outstanding LD 2003 updates, A on page 18, this is amendment number 14. This is a big one that does need to be discussed. This is the road standards trigger. Paving being required at 3 or more lots instead of 10 dwelling units. This would be an update, and this is per our attorney's advice on how to try to view this differently given the new density standards that are in the new laws. So right now, you're triggering pavement and certain road standards per the grid that's in your packet when you get to a certain number of dwelling units. But with this new density law, you could have potentially more dwelling units on each lot. And so you could have more people traveling on that road, even though you don't have as many lots. So that the suggestion was to switch how we apply our road standards to lots instead of dwelling units. And the other piece that it addresses on some level is that if you as a homeowner have a single family home, but you've got the land to add 1 or 2 more dwelling units to your property, it clears up some of the distinction of who's responsible to pave, who's responsible to upgrade the road. Is it you because you're adding the 10th dwelling unit by adding another home on your property? That gets us into kind of messy territory. So doing it by lot when the development is happening can make that a little cleaner. So that was the suggestion, was to go by lot. But it is a significant change for the town and would effectively require you to do a paved way once you're in subdivision, once you trigger subdivision. So this one does need to be contemplated. Again, it was a suggestion from our attorney.
I've not 100% following it better now that you went through all of it. So I can see the point of you can have a subdivision with basically lots that have open, I'll just say open capacity, right? So there might be a subdivision of 10 dwelling units on 10 lots, but each lot has some additional capacity, and that gets to your point of what if one person, who's the person that gets stuck with the paving bill? Are there other reasons, or is that the only one? Because I wasn't following why it's a benefit otherwise.
This just comes down to how do you want your private roads to be in the town of Gray, basically. What do you want your standards to be? Because when you get what we're proposing, if you look at page 19, it has the strike-through underline. Right now, you're still a minor rural street, which has minimal standards for sub-base and width, and you don't have to pave it. and you can have up to 10 dwelling units on that. And we've dealt with a lot of those. This would change that. So as soon as you are at 2 lots, you would be, excuse me, as soon as you're at 3. So you could still do that if you're at 2 lots. Because technically you could have up to 9 units on there. If you're not in an area where you could do multifamily, or it would be even more. And we're not even talking about ADUs, because ADUs don't trigger road standards, but they trigger traffic, potentially. So you could still do that minor rural street if you had 2 lots. But as soon as you're at your second division, your 3 to 5 lots, you're paving, which is not the case now. It is a significant increase in standard to ask you to pave as soon as you're putting in the 3rd lot.
Right. So the numbers that you came up with are roughly based on the maximum, instead of, if the number is 40 dwelling units, it gets reduced to essentially 10 lots. But you kind of took the worst case density. How did you arrive at the numbers, I guess?
No, because worst case density is 5,000 square foot lot if somebody puts in that comparable sewer system, so that's a different thing. And then you've got multifamily with multiple units on one lot. There are a lot of different cases. I think this one is kind of contemplating more the things that that you guys have dealt with as a board.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm coming to you with a small subdivision. And right now I want to keep it under 10 dwelling units or fewer, so I don't have to pave as a developer. That's it. You've seen plenty of those, right?
I mean, I guess I'll speak first, since I'm already speaking. I guess my general take is I like to see kind of more infrastructure required, just from the standpoint of we're the ones that end up with it in the end, right? So if a developer's coming in and they have a business proposition to put something in, what's left in the end is what stays forever, and they may or may not be still around. So I would err on the side of requiring higher quality infrastructure in general.
So, I think I'm in agreement with you on this. I just want to talk it through a little bit. So what you're thinking is that having the pavement is good. It's more infrastructure. It is more than we currently have, but because the density allowances are higher, you could easily end up with 10 or more on 3 lots. And so having 3 trigger the paving of the road. The question I had is that true? Is that what you're saying?
I guess, yeah. It's not great for the person that wants
Right.
3 houses, but
Yeah,
there could be 12 on it.
right,
So you have to plan for I'll call it the worst case, for
Yeah.
lack of a better term.
right.
But
Most dense. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. The thing I'm curious about for the pavement of the road is it doesn't mean it has to be paved. It has to be paved, so that's one standard, but there's different standards. Paved to a standard that could be accepted as a town road, or paved to a standard that the town might agree to plow it. So there's different levels of paving, but paving is some minimal. And I guess, did we also address, or is there somewhere else addressed? It's paved, but it's not ever going to be a town road at that kind of paving. Or if you've
Right.
paved it, is
Yeah.
it
So,
the max?
right, to that point, there are, if you look at the grid on page 19, there are standards. So your minor rural on there is the only one that's not paved. And then you would bump up, in this case, the proposed amendment is as soon as you hit 3 to 5 lots.
Okay.
You're in rural public easement street.
Okay.
Which is the first level of paved street and has the 18-foot width and 2-foot gravel shoulders.
Okay.
That's the lowest level paved road.
Okay.
And that is eligible to go to council for consideration of town plowing
Okay.
at that level. And then you bump up to your rural public street, your village public street, and your sub-collector streets, each of which have, standards that go up and up for, subbase and pavement and width and all of that.
Gotcha. Okay, so it, in theory, still would be some savings if you only wanted it to be plowed maybe by the town, and that would be less costly, I assume, than the higher levels.
Less costly to build, I would
Yes.
figure, yes. It's actually like the sub base and the upper base are the same as for the dirt road.
Okay. So there you go.
And the 2-foot gravel shoulders, that's the same. Grades are the same. The only difference between minor rural and rural public easement, I think, is the bituminous
Okay.
top coat,
Okay.
as it stands right now. And the paving, the plowing by the town, that is a separate set of standards that code, I'm actually looking into doing some edits to that ordinance as well to try to do some clarification there too. And it's in some instances, depending on the age of the road, your trigger for the council to agree to do the plowing is that you need to have 4 dwelling units using that road.
I see.
In other cases, there's not currently an established minimum of dwelling units. So that's another one that will be coming in the future to revisit that piece, and we'll get input on that as well, but keep it in mind, because to your point, if we wanted that to trigger at a lower level of dwelling units, that would come up then.
Okay.
You had to move on?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are we? Okay, so Amendment 15 on page 20, I believe. This is the update to the definition of subdivision and major subdivision, and updates to the definitions for the type of open space areas. This was something we had a workshop on a while back with the Open Space Committee, if you recall, those of you who are here. The open space areas, there's like 3 different types, and they weren't that easy to understand. So we tried to clarify that part of the ordinance. They're not changes, they're clarity changes. Same thing with major and minor subdivision. There was I had to get some legal advice on when how the road part comes into play, so that it clarifies that piece. And the update to the definition of subdivision is required per the new laws. And then getting into, residential open space subdivision, there were actually several other things in there too that needed work. So we're trying to clean those up. Adding the trail specifications, page 23. That one is something that we've dealt with several times where we're like, we want a trail, but we're not telling people what do we need for a trail. So this gets into the real basics of some of the previous trails we've seen in recent projects, which is just clear it so people can walk through, not necessarily improved path, but just cleared. So those standards are added. B is another substantive one, eliminating the density bonus for preservation of sensitive areas. This was something I'd heard a lot of feedback, both from this board and from open space, that you shouldn't be getting a density bonus for conserving space that you can't use anyway. So that's what this is. That's what this reflects.
Thank you.
Nice.
Been doing that one since that ordinance came in.
Yes.
The open space is great, and it's good, and it's usable, but if you can't build on it, you shouldn't be getting a bonus to preserve it.
Right, so that's here.
Thank you.
I've been hearing that for years, that's been on the list, so. C is removing single-family only language, again, like Tammy said, you can't do single-family anymore for zoning. D, this is eliminating the need to show wastewater disposal on each lot if you're using a common system. It seemed like a kind of burdensome requirement, like if you're using a common system and you can show that you have a place that works for that common system, why should each lot have to show that they also can do it? Especially since there's a backup usually required if the test pit doesn't work, so that's what that is. F, again, is defining the types of open space and their standards more clearly. And one of the substantive changes here, so as you may recall from the workshop, there's usable open space, there's total open space, and there's that usable improved common park area, which always seems to be very unclear for developers because of the way it's written right now. So trying to break that out more clearly. And then the substantive change here is proposing that there is a minimum 50 by 50 cleared area that constitutes that common park. So rather than just having it be up next to the road and having access from the road, which is one of the only standards right now, and the size, it would also have to be cleared so people can use it as a picnic space, play Frisbee, have a barbecue with your neighbors. Because we've found in past subdivisions that this common park area has really just turned into buffer. It's just wooded buffer. Nobody can use it. No one's going to invest in clearing the trees. So that's what that is.
And that is it for subdivision.
Nice. A lot of good work in there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody have any
Yes.
questions? on
So
it?
page 3, top of the page 3, which explains about the cistern.
Yes.
It requires licensed engineer to do all the inspections. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 inspections. That doesn't make any sense because usually these tanks, they're coming like box culverts, which put together by the company which supplies them, or it will be fiberglass, it will be pre-made. So I think that you don't really need engineer to inspect it. You have manufacturer, or not manufacturer, the contractor who's installing it actually do the testing, or vacuum testing. They know what it is and certify that it was tested, it was operable.
So you need like more like one test, not 5 tests?
Yeah, and you don't need licensed engineer for it.
Okay.
Okay, let me run that one by the fire chief. This is all language from the fire chief. So, yep, I will bring that
That's
to
overkill,
his attention. Okay.
big time overkill. So I'm good with everything else.
Just thinking about whether I agree with that or not. I'm not sure I can say one way or the other. I don't know. I'd like to know. Well, I don't know. It doesn't need to come back here, but I mean, it depends on the size. There's a lot that can go into it because you're right. Some vessels are purchased. It could be huge. It could be the size of, a cistern could be the size of the water tank on the hill back here. And there's a point where it could be a safety to, safety hazard to the public, which is why you want a licensed engineer to look at it, so.
I mean, maybe.
I don't agree it's like not necessary, but I don't have a specific example of when it would be necessary either, so.
It does seem like if it's typical for some of these to come sort of in a bundle, maybe you wouldn't, even if you had if you left the licensed engineer piece in, at least there would be one inspection, not 5, potentially.
It's just like,
So.
it depends, like if it's underground, right, then
Maybe you need,
there's structural implications, like, does it have, depending where it is underground, it would have to have traffic loading potentially, because you could have a cistern that's underground and also under a hammerhead. And in that case, it would need to be traffic load rated.
That's
So-
manufacturer's engineer. They're
Right, but the
designing them.
installation, that's something that a licensed engineer would oversee. I don't know, I'm just saying there's cases when you need it. I agree, there's cases when you don't, but.
Maybe some flexibility would be good that you could have, as opposed to having like ironclad rules. that you have
Can
it be-
code enforcement officer actually request it?
Yeah, like maybe we get I don't know. We always lean into the fire department and the code to say like what is needed
Right.
here? Did they meet their requirements? Is this particular
what's the-
dynamic requiring?
Yep, this is language from the fire chief that he provided to me, so I will run that by him. This is coming back to you anyway.
Okay.
Subdivision is going back through the whole loop, so.
And I mean, it's not like this is that big of a burden, because there's going to be a licensed engineer that stamps the whole plan anyway, so
Yeah.
their stamp of that is incorporated into what you're doing. I mean, I don't know. I
Yeah.
guess if it's coming back anyways, it'll be interesting to hear more about where that came from.
Okay.
Okay, anything else?
Nope.
Charlie, anything? We're good. Thank you.
Okay.
So this is also a public hearing, so. Welcome.
Howdy.
Thanks for coming up.
All right, Adam Wilkinson, 35 Weymouth Road. Yeah, I had a chance to go through all of it quickly and try to pick out, there were some things that stood out to me, and there is a lot of stuff in this, so I did my best with the time that I had. But there was one thing I kind of wanted to share just from my own experiences. It was regarding the shared driveways. I know that there are places where it probably does make sense. We've run into problems with, technically when you have a shared driveway, it's almost like you have a two-lot homeowners association for the first 30 feet of the driveway. And very rarely do neighbors agree. And even more rarely do they actually know each other. So there's a lot of questions that come up, you know, who maintains it? You know, what if one of the neighbors wants to pave, but the other one doesn't? Who pays for that? How does that work out? Snow plowing, all these things. So I guess the only thing I would say is I would caution just the use of where and how many you do it with, just because of, you've got multiple homes, or I should say 2 homes, and like I said, maybe they know each other, maybe they don't, but you're creating a potential conflict that in years past and traditionally, you know, 2 lots, 2 driveways. I know everybody's trying to cut back on the curb cuts, which I don't always understand that either, because it's still the same number of vehicles entering the roadway. Unless there's some, you know, visual, you know, sight distance barrier, something like that. In those instances, I understand. But I wouldn't want to see every subdivision or every new lot or contiguous lots on roads have shared driveways just due to, like I said, potential conflicts, that's all. And we've seen plenty of them. I've done plenty of private road work, and trying to get everybody on a road to agree is always interesting. So you got to figure that's going to happen also, even if it's only 2 people. So I just figured I'd throw that out. So appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I think Adam mentioned the perfect example of when they are a good idea, which is like if you're gaining safety by having visual sight line or something. I think we've had some where we've done that.
Right, or dodging wetlands or something like that.
Yeah.
Me again.
Welcome back.
I would support Adam's concerns on shared driveways. I've seen many of them and surveyed a lot of them, and it's funny how many of them you go back to in 5 years and there's a fence down right up to the paved piece out at the front because the neighbors don't get along, and that's not uncommon, I'll put it that way. Once again, I did have time to look through this kind of quickly like Adam has, and I've got some concerns in here, speaking to one of them that you guys were just talking about, in the cisterns on the installation. As I'm aware, there is a bond that is put in place by the developer for improvements on the site that covers the town's representative of engineering to come out and do inspections. As far as I know, that should be more than sufficient. They're out there looking at the installation of the road, the bed, all the way through. That, to me, would be the logical way to have that reviewed. And in the process, I don't imagine that it's any different for your inspectors than it is like culverts or foundations. An inspection before you backfill covers just about everything you can think of that's could go wrong with whatever the cistern might be. On another note, I don't necessarily agree with the fire chief, and I am was a 30-year member of this department, has retired several years ago, that there are no longer the option to put dry hydrants in other than a cistern. If you were, the claim that I keep being thrown at me is that the maintenance issues are where it falls. Having connections with the fire department still, as I understand it, there's some close to 10 cisterns in this town that sit empty because they don't hold water. Just as a note, that seems like a pretty significant maintenance issue to me as well. So I would offer that up. There's a bunch of things in here that I had some concerns with, and once again, I think I'm probably better off to sit down with Kristen and go over them individually. before they come back to you for that purpose, because I think there's a lot of it that could be worked out. Your monumentation for survey work, I have some concerns about the way that's worded as well.
Me too.
The other thing that I'll bring up real quick is that the implication in these changes is that when the subdivision plan comes to you, it will have the location of the driveway for each lot set in stone. I don't know, but if I'm on an 80,000 square foot lot with 200 feet of frontage, I'm kind of not liking you guys being the ones that tell me where I got to put my driveway. I'll put it that way. To go for the house that I have no idea where I'm going to put it yet. That seems a little bit hard to determine at the onset. Now, the other one is your road standards for the paving. Going down from your 10 dwelling units to a 3-lot minimum to require paving seems a bit much to me. Not every lot that is going to get developed is going to have maxed out the dwelling units on it, and if it's coming before the board as a subdivision, which is where this will get triggered, you have the knowledge up front of what the proposals are for each lot, as you're eloquently telling me that I gotta know where the driveway is and I gotta know where this all is on each lot. You already know what they're gonna build, because it says whether they're single family or not. Worst thing you've got is the ADUs that, as I understand it, if your approval process and the documents that go with it for a homeowners association specify single family only, that will hold over the ADU requirement from the state. Because they can't mandate above and beyond what rights are already there. So if it's set forth that way, which most of these homeowners associations probably don't currently speak to the number of dwelling units that will be allowed on them, although a lot of them do. And you will find that the changes, I'm not sure how the state is going to handle the changes on the DEP level either, because under your state subdivision definitions, let me get this straight. I think there are 3 separate subdivision definitions in state law. One is the one you're all dealing with commonly, the DEP one, and then the site location law one. They're slightly different. In the DEP's view of things, if you were to do the triggers on whether you trigger a DEP subdivision review is based on the total area of the lot and the number of single-family dwelling units on the lot or multifamily dwelling units. If you're doing a single-family subdivision of 14 lots, which doesn't trigger DEP review, then it can be as big a lot as you started with to work with that, as long as you're limited to 14 lots. If you go to multifamily or duplex, you're down to 5 lots, and you're in before the DEP for review of a subdivision, and only 20 acres instead of the 30 acres on the other side. So I think there's going to be some serious questions coming out of that, which all regulates back to the number of dwelling units that you will be able to put on lots in a subdivision. And once again, you guys have the review process that you're asking for us to define everything that comes in here. You already know what's going to be there for the most part. And I think tying pavement down to 3 lots is, I can think of a lot of subdivisions that were done that it would look a little ridiculous for 3 house lots to have a major paved roadway at that expense of paving that roadway. That's a lot of money. And I'll talk with her later.
So I have a question for you before you. Sure. So, lots of good points. I was thinking about your point of we know what's coming, basically, because we reviewed it. So I see that when there's a homeowners association.
Which
and
you require.
Right. And they define what can or can't be built. What about a subdivision where that's not defined? Then
You
don't
have
know, right? You know-
if you're building a road or a private way of some nature in your subdivision for the access to the lots, then you have a homeowners association. You guys require that.
We require a road association.
Road
Yeah, which is
association,
different.
okay.
Yeah.
Road association can do the same thing.
I don't think a road association can't control
Right.
what happens on the lots.
Yeah,
Take-
to that point, anybody
Take that
who
up to the
has the
town of
land,
Falmouth.
they can add another dwelling unit if they have the land
Well,
at
that's-
any time, unless they're in the covenants, to Wayne's point.
Right.
If it's in the covenants, this is a single-family home only subdivision, no ADUs, no duplexes,
Yeah.
et cetera, then yeah, you're locked in. Otherwise, like we were talking about with the standards, if I want to add the 10th dwelling unit because I have room to put a whole nother full-size dwelling unit on my property, I could.
Well, I
Or you
can,
wait for
from
your
past
neighbor to do it.
experience, back, if any of you remember before 2011, when we redid the private way standards in the town of Gray, the council in their infinite wisdom before then had said that you will upgrade the road to town standards if you're I think you were allowed 3 building permits. If you were the 4th one, you had to upgrade the road all the way to the public road. Now, I want to tell you, I stood here before a council and told them that you have just rendered a significant portion of the lots in this town unbuildable. Because the cost to build the road up, for instance, any one of your roads down around the lakes, if I'm a mile in on one of those roads and I'm number 4 coming up for my building permit, wow, my lot just went from whatever value it had to 0. What do you do with that? That's a thing you're looking at, that you're getting it in. Outside of subdivision, the town of Gray has no private way standard for road construction. These are only in your purview, what these road standards are that you're talking about. And because of 2011, when that was passed, the council took the approach that they wanted to get out of the private way business, and they would no longer accept private roads as town roads unless they had some significant value to the town, such as they connected between one major road and another major road. That was the intent of their change. So any of these roads that you're talking about within your subdivisions since then have been intended to be private roads, not public roads. That's a whole different ballgame when you start leaving the town with the responsibility to do all the maintenance on a road. Having said that, the town was not willing to build roads to the same standard that they wanted subdivision roads built to. That when they rebuilt the road, it was to what would be considered the one you want for beginning paving now. 20 feet at best, and that was it. Now, another little ditty that you brought up that you reminded me of, turnarounds off of Hammerhead. I mean, a Hammerhead, a driveway, wow. I can tell you that I'm faced with one in a neighboring town that the turnaround is spelled out, it has to be on the right-hand side of the road, it can't be on the left. Apparently, they can't figure out how to plow snow anyway but that. Talking to many different private street plowers in this area, makes no difference to anybody which way you turn the thing or if there's a driveway off it. It's still, to me, if I put my driveway off the end of your turnaround, that's going to mean your turnaround's for sure plowed because I got to plow it to get to my house. Just saying. I don't know. I don't follow that logic at all.
All right, thank you. Well, both our members of the public spoke, so I'll close it. Thank you for your comments. Anything else?
Oh,
All right.
I have a
Yeah.
process question.
Sure.
What happens now? I mean, there's more public feedback, then it comes back to us for what? An advisory opinion to the council? And then that,
Right, take that one. So the subdivision ordinance, these are all land use ordinances, so they're defined in the process is defined in the town charter. So they're a higher standard of review. So subdivision got tabled at council, so it is not moving forward to final read, but we figured we'd follow through and get additional input now, so we can clean it up and bring it back through the loop. So what happens now is it's tabled at council, so when we go to second read, we won't go to second read on April 7th, which we had planned to do. Zoning will go to second read on April 7. Growth will go to second read on April 7. Subdivision will not. So subdivision will come back to my desk to incorporate the input from you and from Wayne and Adam and whoever else reaches out by email or in person or whatever. We'll work that back in. We'll bring it back to first read, and we'll start the process over again. So it'll go to council, hopefully, I don't know the exact timeline. It depends when it gets done and put back together. And then it'll go council again for second read.
got it. Thank you.
And after second read, then it's
Done deal. And
Implemented.
yeah, number 30
But we
days.
do have a deadline.
We have a deadline for these, which is July 1.
Yeah,
That's
so
when
we
the
wanna
state
make
law
sure,
goes into
We'd like to get it
effect.
done in,
yeah.
Yep.
what's safe, May or whatever.
That's why we tried to
wanna get
move it
done. Yeah, that's
now.
why she did that. We want to get it done,
Yes, because we anticipated there may be a period where it couldn't move all the way through, so we
Right.
tried to back it up. So we do have that
Nice.
window to move it back through again and get it in place for July 1. That's the goal.
Perfect. Yeah, good question.
motion to adjourn?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.